Amen, amen. Get right, church, and let's go home. Amen, 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 amen. Kingdom greetings and God's richest blessings be multiplied to you and yours, beloved family. You're tuned into another segment of Healing Our Lands, live, interactive, worldwide broadcast exclusively here on the Boston Praise Radio and TV Network. I'm your host, Pastor Hobbs. I'll be with you through the 6 p.m. Healing Our Land's new broadcast schedule is Wednesday and Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we are exclusively talk at this particular season. Have my co-host in the persons of Marvin's Bell Branch, a young intern from Madison Park Development Corporation that co-hosts with me 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Wednesday and Friday. He unfortunately is not with me on today, but we're holding it down in any event. I have a guest that will be joining us momentarily in the persons of Domingo de Rosas, and he is running for mayor of the city of Boston, along with Mayor Wu, obviously our incumbent, and Josh Kraft, as well as William Wright, are the candidates that are on the docket as it stands, or that have announced their candidacy. And we will interview them all, or extend an invitation to them all, as well as invite them all to come with us behind the wall at the Suffolk County House of Correction and the Nashua County Jail, where we're doing civic engagement. And we're so grateful for the support of the volunteers who from Harvard community, from Harvard University. That's right, Harvard University. I want to acknowledge the students from Harvard University, as well as from Northeastern University. I want to acknowledge Dr. Professor Bayou, and all of the students that are helping us to build infrastructure and capacity to be able to go behind the walls, as well as our Democracy Behind Bars Coalition. I'm grateful for the support of the many volunteers, and Ellie Kaufis, Hamza Barrios, my brother, or Joshua Barrios, aka Hamza, an inside organizer that was at MCI Norfolk with the African American Coalition Committee that's led our work. Now he's an outside organizer and doing extraordinary work. He's actually a student at Harvard University. So momentum is building in our movement for civic engagement at the Suffolk County. I want to acknowledge Sheriff Steve Tompkins, who has been consistently supportive of our efforts over decades, 2 decades, almost 3 decades that we have been going behind the wall at the Nashua County Jail, the Suffolk County House of Correction. And so I'm so grateful for his leadership, as well as, quite candidly, the only sheriff in the Commonwealth that I'm cognizant of through our coalition that has afforded access behind the walls, and said right here in this studio on Boston Praise Radio and TV Network, and continues to unapologetically state that he believes that it's unconscionable for people who are behind the wall to be denied the right to vote, inclusive of restoring the rights for people who are serving felony convictions here in the state of Massachusetts. You should know that Massachusetts actually had the right for people serving felony convictions or universal voting rights, along with Maine and Vermont, up until recently, 2000 to be exactly, that Massachusetts stripped people who were serving felony convictions of the right to be able to vote. Why? Because people at MCI Norfolk were actively engaging to exercise that right and creating programs behind the wall. People were coming behind the wall who were elected officials or candidates because they certainly understood they wanted the votes of people who were behind the wall, and they were advocating for programming behind the wall. And many people felt, particularly, unfortunately, the unions of correctional officers felt that was too much power. It was the acting Republican Governor Cellucci whom actually stripped them of that right. And now it literally takes a constitutional amendment to restore that right. And our brothers at MCI Norfolk, the African American Coalition Committee, wrote the piece of legislation that has come favorably out of the Elections Committee, both House and Senate. And it has this is the 3rd state in the country to be able to get a piece of legislation favorably out of the Elections Committee. Now, it was just refiled. Actually, interesting enough, on this past Wednesday was a hearing, Representative Ida Hoven and Senator Liz Miranda refiled that piece of legislation, and testimony was given for people virtually who are behind the wall, people physically went there, formerly incarcerated, people who are still incarcerated, advocated for that. And we're believing, and we need your help to be able to call your legislators so that we can make certain that it comes favorably out of the Elections Committee, again, as it has to do that for 2 consecutive cycles. Then it has to go through the entire state of Massachusetts and gather enough signatures to be able to be put as a ballot referendum. Then we have to have the majority of people throughout the Commonwealth be able to actually pass it. That's the stages that it needs to happen for it to be restored here in the state of Massachusetts. And so we need your help to make that happen. And we're hopeful simultaneously while we're working to restore the rights for people serving felony convictions in the state of Massachusetts, that we're building infrastructure and a robust model in the Suffolk County that we can replicate across the Commonwealth. Again, to build that infrastructure, it's one thing to be able to know you have the right. It's another thing to be able to intelligently cast your vote. It's another thing to be able to have the infrastructure to be able to exercise the right that you have on paper. 2022, the Votes Act was passed. With that said, passing legislation is a piece of it. Implementation is a harder part. And so it's important to pass it, but we can't just pass it and believe that it's going to happen, that it's going to be implemented if we aren't very intentional in being able to hold our elected officials accountable and hold the people whom we ultimately are responsible for the parties for the details within that legislation, for it to actually manifest. We've got to push to make that happen. And so, and if we don't, it will only actually makes no sense that we pass the legislation and eventually that legislation will be moot, or it will actually be rescinded and we move backwards in this notion of democracy that, quite candidly, is something that we've never fully achieved here in these United States. It's supposed to be a peaceful transfer of power, and we understand that and see that it's not peaceful, and we can't take things for granted. January 6th, from my perspective, was a wake-up call, and we are not exempt as America. We are safe, and so we must be very diligent to protect the version of democracy that we have and to be able to continue to move that to genuinely be democracy. So we need your help. Again, if you're interested in becoming a part of our movement, you can reach us at 617-435-2066, 617-435-2066. Check out Healing Our Land's webpage, and that's www.healingourlandinc.org, www.healingourlandinc.org, where you can learn more about the mission and the vision of Healing Our Land and help to join our movement. That is a state of emergency youth and young adult led and adult and institution supported movement. No movement is a success without successors. And it's imperative that we put our young people in the forefront of these movements, as our young people know what is relevant, know what's current, real time. I thank God for our young people that are helping me to be able to embrace technology, to be able to be relatively current and relevant with the tools. We're now on Instagram. I was never even on Facebook, but I learned via our young people that you had to be on Facebook, and that's Healing Our Land became on Facebook when we were addressing the HIV/AIDS state of emergency. Here we are 26 years later, and I can't imagine being not utilizing Facebook. That's actually become one of an antiquated model. But nonetheless, we've been able to, via just a push of a button, we can engage with 5,000 followers, and we can stream real time within the community as we built time. Quite candidly, we don't own the platform, and it's a great platform that we can utilize. I would surmise that we need to actually create our own platforms that we control, and these are things that our young people, our engineers, can be able to produce, that we're not always on other people's platforms, and we're not just consumers or utilizers, but we're actually the architects of platforms that we can control, and that we don't have to worry about them being shut down, and all of the followers that one, or all of the content that we create could be in a moment taken because we don't own the platform. So we got a lot of work to do, and we know how to do this as people of color who have known necessity is the mother of invention, and so we know how to do this. This is my guest, I believe, coming. That's Domingo DeRosa, so I may have to pause and run to the door to be able to let him in, as I am alone. So bear with me while I run to answer the door. You may hear some silence while I quickly go answer the door, and I'll be right back. And we're back. So sorry about that, family. So Domingo DeRosa is here. He'll be joining me momentarily. And so we're going to, you can call in at 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685, or 617-7794, 617-282-7794, or 617-265-2679, 617-265-2679. And we want to hear from you. You can also join us via www.bostonpraiseradio.tv. Go right here, brother, if you don't mind. bostonpraiseradio.tv. You can join in the instant chat. We're on Pastor Bruce Wall's Facebook page. And we're going to go right to our interview. I'm out of breath here. I ran to the door, ran back, but it's good to see you, brother. How are you?
Man, good afternoon, brother. I'm glad you're patient, man.
Of course.
This Boston traffic is only getting better.
Okay. That's an optimistic perspective.
I had to keep it in a nice format.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's one of the things that we keep talking about as Bostonians is, you know, our Boston traffic is only getting worse.
Okay.
And it's a big piece of why folks are leaving the city, on top of so many other issues. But good afternoon. Glad to see you.
Always.
It's been a while.
It has.
I'm excited, as you can see.
Yes.
But yeah.
Welcome, brother. Welcome. So for those who, you know, I can't imagine who doesn't know Domingo DeRosa. He's been in the community for some time, but I don't know who could not know that he is running for mayor. And we're excited that he's here in the studio. We've been talking. He's been engaged on. He's no stranger to Boston Praise Radio and TV Network. And so, anytime a conversation's happening about someone running for mayor, he would tell you that. I'm like, bro, you need to call in and chime in, because this is what we do on Boston Praise Radio and TV Network. So we understand that. I was just saying a little earlier that the candidate, from what I understand right now, the candidates are obviously Michelle Wu, the incumbent, obviously Josh Kraft. And there was rumors, or it was announced, that O'Brien was going to be running, but that's no longer the case. He's no longer running. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, he actually, you know, made a statement a few days ago where he has no interest in running for Boston mayor. So, but there's also another gentleman from Hyde Park that folks are not really speaking about.
Who's that?
I'm trying to pull his name up now.
Okay.
I've never met the individual. Yeah. I might have, but just not.
Is that the restaurateur?
I believe so.
Okay.
And, you know, democracy has to work when folks include themselves in the conversation. And that's one of my biggest thing about running for office. Learning the process has taught me so much on why we're in the position we are today, not only as a city, but as a country. Mm-hmm. It's not fair to the process when we exclude people because of their economic status. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing when folks, you know, ask me who's running for the seat, I always include all of us.
Absolutely.
Because again, it's the people's choice. It shouldn't be dictated by how much money you raise or how much money you have or what kind of money you're able to attract. And that's why nationally we're in the situation we're in. And locally, we can actually make history by showing that we're not going to allow big bank to take little bank, you know, as the word gentrification says, when it comes to, you know, how we feel about different communities. But the reality is democracy doesn't work when you allow money to influence it.
I mean, facts. So let's go here. So the declared candidates per Wikipedia says that Dominita Rose, the community activist, independent.
Yes, sir.
It goes on to say Josh Kraft, non-profit executive and son of New England Patriots, Democrat, and George Mendoza Iturralde, restaurateur. He's also independent, and obviously the incumbent Michelle Wu. Those are the declared candidates per Wikipedia as it stands.
Yeah. And again, that's only with the state office of finance and campaign.
Okay.
What that means is, of course, Wu is the incumbent, but for us three who are coming into the process, that only means that we're able to generate funds through the state.
Okay.
April 16th is the actual paper pulling day, as we call it.
Okay.
You pull your papers on the 16th with the city or town that you run with,
Okay.
which is Boston for us.
Okay.
Until that specific date, we're just individuals who are looking to run for mayor. We're not actually in the full process of running until those documents are actually pulled with the city of Boston.
I appreciate that education and that so we know, so we understand, like, you know, because actually there's another candidate who I don't see listed here who I know I've heard call in on numerous opportunities, and that's Bill Wright.
Yes, and I was going to bring him in onto the conversation too, and that's because he hasn't pulled anything with the state, and technically he doesn't need to. That's just to give you the opportunity to create a fiscal support system to bring in the funds. And this is why folks usually set that up months, even years before they run, so they can build that bank of money so they can run. For someone like me, I'm not looking to solicit more than I need. This is not a campaign about raising millions of dollars. Again, my community average income is $35,000 a year. I don't see folks giving up grocery money, especially in the times we're in now, to a campaign, because for me, it's just not something that I've ever been eager to campaign on, raising, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. But we do need to raise some type of funds to help us, get our message out there. And my thing is with the internet and everything that comes along with it, we're able to market without having to spend top dollars.
That's facts. With that said, the notion of democracy, right? My understanding, and I learned this via Ben Thompson, right? Who I understand, he used to be the executive director of Strive right over here on Washington Street. You know about?
Yeah, I know Strive.
And so I know he also apparently was the elections commissioner or manager, which I thought was interesting. I did not know that, but that's what I learned most recently. And what I understood from him is that 28% of registered voters, right? 28% of registered voters actually voted Mayor Michelle Wu into office, right? So when we talk about democracy, right, and we're talking about, that's just even people who even bothered to actually cast a ballot, though they were registered, right? So when we, for me, it's really important. Yes, democracy only works when we participate, right? Never mind people whom never were even registered. You certainly can't vote if you're not registered, right? And many people know or don't know that Healing Our Land with Democracy Behind Bars Coalition, we've been aggressively working to be able to get people to exercise the right and build the infrastructure and do the education around those voting who are incarcerated, right? Another whole population that people just don't even think about, that certainly, have bright ideas, who are, need to be able, as I think our Congresswoman Presley, I understand, gets credit for. I don't know if she was the architect of this, but people closest to the pain are also the people who are closest to the solutions, right? So democracy is something that it only works when we participate in it. So I totally appreciate what you're saying. And as you know, when we go behind the walls, and we're bringing all the candidates behind the walls of Healing Our Land is nonpartisan. We'll bring people on the Healing Our Land's platform on Boston Praise. We bring them behind the walls. We go from unit to unit. So we're not, I believe I hear that potentially Sheriff Tompkins may be doing a candidates forum, and we're going to find out if in fact he's going to do that, and if in fact it's just going to be for the mayoral candidates, or if it's going to be for the city councilors. We don't know that. We're still working to hear that. And either way, if that is going to happen, we're working with the people who are directly impacted, because we do democracy circles. We're consistently going, whether it's election year or not. We consistently are doing education, having reflection circles, talking about how you participate in democracy beyond just casting a vote, right? So we have a public hearing getting ready to happen at City Hall, talking about the critical issues that we've experienced in the primary and the general election for the president. People who didn't get to cast their votes, and people.
Not enough ballots.
Well, that's what happened for people who are on the outside, right? These are people that's
on the inside.
So what I'm saying though, so the elections department is actually in receivership with the state right now because people were disenfranchised who are not incarcerated. So that's only further amplified for people who are incarcerated. Correct. Right. So these critical issues, and the fact that people could not even reach the commissioner, including the Secretary of State, right? And so this hearing, people actually wrote testimony that will be able to give voice at this public hearing, though they're behind the wall. Some people who are behind the wall, who've come from behind the wall, are now they're inside organizers, and now they're outside organizers. We call them jail-based ambassadors. Many of them are pre-trial. They're not even sentenced. Yeah. But they're people and many of the people who never voted before. But they now understand the importance, and now they're becoming civically engaged, and they're understanding various ways you can even testify for those who are serving felony convictions, who the right was stripped from them, right? They are giving testimony at the hearing that happened on this past Wednesday to refile for restoring the rights for people serving felony convictions that was taken from them in 2000. There's another whole population, right, that's been disenfranchised. Right. So when we talk about democracy, right, these are some of the communities that we have to be very intentional in bringing into, I think, because when you get 28% of the people actually who only show up, who actually even registered, here's another whole population.
Oh yeah, it's a deep conversation. Like, we can go on that for all day because, again, one, you're already serving your time. You're already being degraded by the way you're being treated, inhumane, right? Absolutely. And then on top of that, on top of your punishment, now you're going to tell me you're going to take my rights to vote away because I committed, small offenses, things that in one person's eye might not have as much weight as another. A felony is a felony. We know that. But at the same time, you did your time, you come home, you should still be able to have your rights as a human being to vote.
Well, let me just say, so in Massachusetts, if you are convicted of a felony and you've been released, you can vote, actually. And
we're one of the only states.
Well, yeah, actually, there are a few states. So let me just say this. So in Massachusetts, if you are serving a felony conviction and you've served your time, you're on probation, you're on parole, you can vote. Right. And two, if you used to be able to vote even while serving a felony conviction up until 2000. Yeah. Vermont and Maine, that was always the case along with Massachusetts up until 2000. They stripped them. And why? Because people at MCI Norfolk were exercising that right to create programming and having elected officials come through who were campaigning. And it was a Republican administration, acting Governor Cellucci, who stripped them of that right because, again, correctional officers that are unionized felt that was too much power for people who are incarcerated. And let me just go back here. The 13th Amendment says slavery was abolished with the exception of those who've been convicted of a crime. Right. So for all intent purposes, right, felony disenfranchisement is a relic of slavery. Right. And let's go, not only that, those who are incarcerated, never mind felonies, right? Those who've been convicted, misdemeanor or felony, are reduced to a slave, which is why you can treat them inhumanely, which is why you can make them work and pay like $1 a day. Mm-hmm. That's slavery, right? It's a caste system. So it's the new modern day slavery.
And then when people step up, like you said, in 2020, they felt that it was a little too much power for folks that shouldn't have it. And again, we're going through that on the outside too. When we had this last presidential election and people ran out of ballots. Right. How do you run out of ballots?
Exactly.
On a presidential election. So it goes back to, again, what is democracy? What does democracy look like for you? And that's a lot of the conversations that I've been having with getting our community, and I mean the Boston community, to get civically engaged.
Yeah.
The numbers, I brought this up earlier in another conversation, District 7 here in Boston, between 2006, the last time Chuck Turner ran, to 2023, with Tanya Fernandez Anderson,
Yes.
there was a 3,200 decrease in votes. Why? Why did we lose 3,000 votes within that time span? What's happening? And again, it's not just gentrification.
Yeah.
But what's happening that people are not engaging themselves in their civic duties?
And
How do we correct that? How do we put a spotlight on it? Because it's not just District 7. It's across the city in different districts.
Correct.
And in 2021, a lot of Wu's votes came out of West Roxbury, Southie, Lower Mills,
Okay.
which is in certain parts of Hyde Park, especially, where the police academy area of Hyde Park, Truman Highway area, which is, I want to say, precinct Ward 18, Precinct 20.
Mm-hmm.
And those communities are engaged year round.
Sure.
They have different associations that
Yep.
bring and show not just into the information, but the value of the vote.
Sure.
We see that when it comes to services across the city.
Absolutely.
But my goal as a candidate is to bring not only things of that nature to light, but to bring the fact that we're in a position to show some unity amongst all communities in Boston, all 23 communities across the city, because within those 23 communities, there's sub-communities like Common Square, the Mecca, Nubian Square, Pear Square, Fields Corner. Like, I can name so many different communities within the community.
Yep.
Folks want the same services across the city.
Okay.
They're not looking for anything different but the quality of the service.
Okay.
And that's one of my biggest push. We do not receive the same quality services in every single neighborhood in Boston.
Facts. Let me just, I want to engage some of our audience. So Tina Lee, God bless you. She's saying good evening, as well as Patricia Lee's tuning in. She said good afternoon. She also asked what was your name, and you can tell her what your name is. I said it, but you can introduce yourself.
My first name is Domingos De Rosa. I've been in Boston for 47 years. I'm a family man. I own a business that I started in 2015. I used to work for the city of Boston. I spent 23, a little under 24 years with the Boston Centers for Youth and Families. When I was hired, it was under the Flynn administration. We were still called Boston Centers. I spent more than half my life there providing services to families across the city, where I got to learn Boston at a ground level. Mm-hmm. The services that BCYF provides is direct services, just like Parks and Recs and DP, Departments of Public Works. Mm-hmm. And my love for the city, Boston runs through my veins. Like, I've never relocated. My parents came over. My dad immigrated in '75 when we had the Flex of Independence in Cape Verde. We actually gained our independence in '75 from Portugal. My mom came in '78. I was 9 months when I arrived on the shores of Boston. I never left. I've never had any interest going anywhere else but Boston. I learned a lot of the things because that love, being able to navigate all 23 communities as a youngster. A lot of the things that we faced as a city, we overcame because of our resilience as residents, as Bostonians. The ups, the downs, the goods, the bads. I mean, I can go on and on. But the reality is, today, Boston is not in the position that we should be when it comes to the folks who have bled for the city. Mm-hmm. Folks who have dedicated a majority of their lives to how we function as a city. So, sitting here and having the opportunity just to speak on myself, I'm a BPS grad. I graduated from Madison Park in '96. The reputation was given to the school. Someone who was inside the school, we didn't see that. We didn't see that reputation because we were there, and we didn't understand, like, the worst school in Boston. I can make $70,000 coming out of Madison.
Mm-hmm.
The support's not there.
Mm-hmm.
The enthusiasm on making the school the shining star out of the 14 trade schools in Massachusetts is not there. So watching the city transform into what it is today is a lot of the reasons why I'm advocating for us to unify on these subjects, to make sure that all voices are heard, not selected few, not the ones in positions of power, not the ones supporting and funding campaigns and putting people in position, the ones that, you know, are driving through Common Square on a Friday night trying to get home from a 7 to 3 shift, or on their way to work to do a 3 to 11. We can't continue to function as a city if we're not going to put the best foot forward. And what I see happening today under this administration is it's not gonna sustain the folks who have been here. It's gonna bring in a new wave, which is okay. It's okay to have a new wave of people coming in, but at the same time, the folks who have been here for the last 50, 60 years, we're being priced out, we're being forced out, we're being cast aside. Our voices don't matter anymore. Because of what's going on a, you know, administration level. So, you know, I'm just an average working man. I'm a family man. You know, my only title that I usually put out there is dad. Like, that's the title that means the most to me with my 4 children. I've mentored and counseled thousands of BPS students, of children across the city. Mm-hmm. I dedicated my life in the 90s when I was losing friends to gun violence week after week, day after day. And I said, you know, I can't go down that path and become a statistic. So what am I going to do that's different? So I chose to do a lot of advocacy work. You know, at that time, we didn't call it advocacy work. We was just working. We was just doing what needed to be done. Today, we call it, you know, advocacy work. But I've never given myself that title of an advocate. That was placed upon me because of the work I do. I'm just glad that I have the opportunity to step into that light and help and assist not only my community, but all communities in Boston. Like I said, I'm just an average guy who's looking to make a difference for everyone across the city of Boston.
So let me ask you, and as I think I shared with you, you know, as we do civic engagement and we're letting people know behind the walls, all of the candidates, when I let the folks know that you actually were running, there was a particular individual who was like, "Oh, that was my coach," right? And was excited to hear that you actually were on the ballot. So, you know, so it's interesting as you mentored and you've, you know, impacted people whom, you know, who remember that, and we're excited to hear that, you know, that you're running. And so, and in fact, Rachel Rollins has her organization called The Fort now at Roxbury Community College. And she actually has dedicated her life's work to be helping those directly impacted be able to re-enter into society. In fact, Sheriff Tompkins is the president of the board of directors for RCC, where the Fort is it's in her own nonprofit organization that's actually housed at RCC. And so she said her greatest goal, or her greatest accomplishment in life, to your point, is actually raising a healthy young human being who happens to be her sister's daughter, right, who was incarcerated. She's never been incarcerated, never intends to be, right. But a person whom we know as the district attorney, whom got a lot of pushback for not prosecuting low-level, non-violent offenses in the city of Boston. If you need rehabilitation, right? If you need if you're
hand up,
help folks. If people, you know, are addicted, give them addiction counsel. Like, don't further incarcerate people for trauma that they're trying to survive from, right? And so and so now she's focused on doing this, and now she's starting to do virtual classes from RCC behind the wall, coming with us behind the wall to build relationships with people, not as a candidate, but as an advocate, right?
Right.
And as you're doing these classes, you have to meet with her once a week and helping you get mental health and physical health and just all the community supports that you need.
That's what we need.
To be able to, and if you want to do a trade, if you want to get a degree, whatever it is that you need, you're entrepreneurs, you're leaders, right? And then when you come out, you're going to be enrolled at RCC physically, and she'll continue to meet with you weekly and support you. So I'm just saying these are some of the resources and things that are in place, and some of the things that we're doing at RCC. And you talked about Madison Park, right? These are places, and these are some of our gems that are in our community that we've got to keep.
Right. We don't want to lose them.
We can't lose them. So let me ask you, with regard, you said Madison Park and as an advocate, and I know that was something at one point that was looking to actually, it was decided that it was going to be moved, and there was some pushback from, I know Siddiqui was one of the people whom was a staunch advocate, Danielle Williams. She also was another person who was a graduate who said absolutely not. And so there was some pushback that was able to stop that.
Well, that was for O'Brien. So what they were trying to do was bring O'Brien to the West Roxbury campus and give Madison its building back, the blue building, which is O'Brien, the blue building, and allow that to be the 7th and 8th grade system to feed the school. And, you know, I brought this up in 2017. I brought it up the day I graduated in 96. Madison has always been neglected because it impacts the middle class. 85% of the middle class are tradesmen and women. No degrees, just a trade. So when you take 2,000 plus Boston students and you provide them with a career, not a job, a career, that changes the trajectory of these families.
Absolutely.
We're no longer talking about low-income housing.
That's right.
Because we're buying these houses because we're making enough funds to support our needs. So why would you want to see that? Why would you want to see a community thrive financially? So they destroyed it from day one by not providing the resources needed for these students, including myself. My guidance counselor, you know, when I went in for, you know, career day, it was, you're going to jail or you're going to die. Domingos, you're going to wind up in jail or you're going to wind up dead like the rest of your friends.
Oh, wow.
This is what I was told at 17.
Wow. From the guidance counselor?
From my guidance counselor, Mr. Sanders.
Wow.
White guy.
Wow.
Meanwhile, my friends were dying and my friends were going to jail. So what did I have to look forward to as a student when the people who were supposed to be helping me are telling me my future is there's none. You have no future. Wow. Until I met certain people in the community who was like, listen, you're doing all these things when you leave school. Come hang out with us. We'll show you something different. My swim coach, Al Kenneth, passed away a few months back. I love him to death. He was the lifeguard at the Mason pool, and he said, listen, man, we're going to get you certified as a lifeguard, and we're going to get you a summer job. At 16, I was running my own pool, along with the supervision of Miss Harris out of the Shelbourne. She gave me, you know, the key to the building and said, do your thing. From there, I became a city employee. And I never in my life have ever told a young person the downfalls of life. I've always uplifted them to show them a better format of succeeding. We've always telling people what they don't have, but we never tell them what they do have. And I've always lived by that motto as a mentor, as a coach, as a dad, as a brother, as a cousin, as a son. I've always told folks, you know, if you think you can do it, do it. Now, are you always going to succeed? No, I'm not going to sell you that dream, but that doesn't mean you can't try. And a lesson comes in different formats. A loss is a lesson. You can't learn if you're not willing to take a loss. And that's what I've been doing these last other elections. 2017, I raised $2,200. I got 14,000 votes. No one even thought I was going to get on the ballot. 2019, I raised about $15,000, and then I was told I couldn't show up at different events because I didn't raise their mark. Their benchmark was $20,000+ for you to be a viable candidate. So I learned what it meant to be a viable candidate in their eyes. It didn't matter that I went out there and got 2,200 signatures. It didn't matter that I was out there doing the work. It didn't matter. And 2019, I learned so much that in 2021, I made sure that I shared the information because keeping it to myself was doing a disservice to the next person who wanted to run for office. That's where I met, you know, folks like Rachel Rawlins, who are looking to run for office, and you know they were trying to get in and they didn't really fully understand what the process was. You know, for at-large counselor you need 1,500 votes, 1,500 signatures. For a district you need 200. For the DA you need, I believe it's a little, I want to say about 400 signatures for you to run for these different positions. It's not about how much money you raise. It's about getting the signatures to get on the ballot. It's a petition of your neighbors who are registered voters. So in 2025, my message is humanity. Like, let's get back to being cordial with each other. Let's put our differences aside and work on the issues instead of bickering with each other about who is in charge or who, as we call them, gatekeepers. It's not about that because the work needs to get done. And it's not going to get done when we're bickering over who's in charge of the conversation because we all have a piece of the puzzle when it comes to these topics.
I appreciate that. So let me ask you, that's great, and I hear you, and I agree with you, and that's altruistic. Practically, we're as fragmented as we are, as polarized as a community. Some very specific things. So, for instance, you mentioned the Madison, right? So what would you do? I mean, you know, how would, if you became mayor, what would you do to be able to invest into that school and to change that? Is that something you'd make?
Well, when I become mayor, the first thing we're going to do is make sure that students as young as first grade understand they have a path to a career. We have to antagonize our youngest minds at a younger age so they can go into these different trades. And not only the students, the parents. You know, if my dad knew that I can come out of Madison with a plumber's certificate into apprenticeship and I had a direct line into the unions. And I'm not talking about we're working with the unions. I'm talking about you walk across that stage, your application was already submitted on senior day. And it's going to be honored. It's not going to be you got to go through the process. You're automatically in that list. And that's how we get our students to become, you know, successful and financial. But what I'm saying to you as a city, we have to change the reputation of the school. It's not the worst school in Boston. It's treated as one of the worst schools in Boston. We're 14 out of 14 trade schools in Massachusetts. We're the only one that don't have a waiting list or an exam to get in. Blue Hill region has a waiting list. Lincoln and Lexington, Minuteman has a waiting list. Worcester has a waiting list. The agricultural school in Dighton, Mass has a waiting list. Down in the Cape area, they have, and the reason why they have a waiting list is because these parents are being educated on what these schools can provide. Madison can provide you with financial freedom because you'll be able to have a trade under your belt, and that trade will give you a career. 20 years as a plumber, 25 years as an electrician. It's giving you an opportunity that a lot of us young folks, again, me, class of 96, no one told me that. My guidance counselor didn't tell me that I could have went into the plumbers union. His advice actually made me dislike going to school. Because then it was like, so why am I even here? And the reputation is what needs to be changed. And, you know, as mayor, we're going to fill the school because we're going to promote the school. We're going to make sure that the school receives the resources it needs from the trades. There's over 60 trades, but Madison only has a handful, and they're reducing them daily. Who's going to fix these electric cars? Who's going to fix these solar panels? Who's going to fix these electric buses? If we're not teaching our students at Madison EV, how are they going to compete?
All right. What about HVAC or the new iteration of HVAC?
Well, the heat pumps. I mean, I can go on and on. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle that's being kept from Madison. Hoisting license. The guys that are driving Fafinis, that are working the front loaders and the Bobcats and the excavators and the backhoes, that's a hoisting license. They don't offer that there. We can go to Dighton, the Dighton Agricultural School. They teach the kids how to drive Bobcats and so forth. I remember being a kid playing with Tonka trucks.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have EMTs, police, or fire. Those are trades also that should be at Madison, but they're not. So again, change the reputation.
Yep.
Encourage our students to want to be into those fields. Not just STEM. Like STEM became the new conversation. Everybody's like STEM. Fine. Not every kid's going to want to pick up a hammer.
Absolutely.
But let's promote it just as much as we promote Latin Academy, as much as we promote Boston Latin or even O'Brien. And I think with that kind of mindset, and again, being an alumni, that's what I've been doing since 96.
Okay.
Is promoting. 9 out of 10 kids that came out of my football program, the Boston Bengals,
Yep.
have gone to Madison. What's sad is they don't have a football program. So now these same kids that I mentor, coach, there's no football team, but you're going to get a trade. You're going to get a career. So we have to give not just Madison. We're talking about all our schools. You know, K through 8, 23% of our students are at reading level. That was a study that came out a few weeks back. 32% of our high school students are reading at grade level. No one's talking about the dropout rate.
And schools that they're closing down. Would you support a fully elected school committee?
I voted for it in 21. I'm still waiting for it. That again, first day in office, that happens.
Okay.
Because we as a city voted for it. And we're talking to deaf ears. You know, we're being told in different community meetings, the mayor hears you. The mayor hears you. Show us. That's what my dad used to tell me all the time. Oh, I heard you, Dad. Well, why is the trash still in the trash can? It should be outside on the curb.
Facts.
We want to see tangible action items, things that we can come out and actually perform. Speed bumps. Use the same asphalt to fill in the potholes. Let's fix the streets before we start adding problems to the streets. Traffic enforcement. Double parking on Blue Hill Ave is bananas, but there's no enforcement. And that's not just on Blue Hill Ave, that's across the city. We're not asking you to make single lanes. Columbia Road cannot take a single lane from Blue Hill Ave to Mass Ave. That is a major artery.
Okay.
Blue Hill Ave is a major artery. It's Route 28 for people that don't know. It's a state road. That's why you see state police flying up and down Blue Hill Ave now,
Okay.
like they used to do back in the 80s and the 90s, because it's a state road and that enforcement's going to be done by the state police along with Boston police. But we're not asking you to make it a bus lane in the middle. We're asking you to enforce the rules that are on the books now to make sure that there's no double parking, no illegal U-turns, speeding, and so forth. So we can travel across the city in 15 minutes. It takes me 45 minutes from Hyde Park to Dorchester every morning.
Okay.
So why would I want to stay in Boston if we're not going to fix the obvious problems? And that's where I'm at. I'm at the point where let's fix the obvious problems. Let's start adding to the problem. We've added bike lanes everywhere. Now we're taking away bike lanes. That's unnecessary spending. Now, do we need a bike lane on Blue Hill Ave from Mattapan Square all the way to downtown? Yeah. A bike lane, not a center bus lane. We need to make things practical that make sense to the city. And that's not what's happening. The Green New Deal's gone. You're not going to get federal funding for these bike lanes. That's another reason why she's backpedaling on a lot of those Green New Deal items, because you're not going to get. We bought 300 school buses, electric school buses. The electric infrastructure in Boston does not have the power grid to sustain those buses along with these zero emission homes. She backpedaled on that too. That, you know, we're not going to force all these new developments. And then she backpedaled on it again at her state of the city, that we're going to ask for zero emissions. It's not practical. We do not have the infrastructure to sustain the electric that we need. We can see that with Canada. What's going on in New York, in upper northeast parts of America, where we don't have the power grid because the supply is being brought in from outside the country. Until we can provide our own energy, it's not sustainable.
So with 6 minutes left, this is your camera, this is your mic, and tell Boston why we should vote for Domingo DeRosa for mayor.
Well, again, I just want people to be civically engaged. That's, a big push for me. But the reason why I need your help and support in obtaining the mayor seat, I am a Bostonian, thick and through. The good, the bad, and the ugly, I've been here. I've been doing the work. My track record shows. The things that I advocate for, it's not pertaining to one community. It's pertaining to all the communities in Boston. My vision of Boston is your vision of Boston. I hear people tell me all the time, we need to go back to the Menino days. Menino was a Bostonian who cared for Boston just like I am. Surround yourself with good people, the work will get done. Everything that I have experienced here in Boston has made me get to this point. Our school systems, 41% of our budget. We spend almost $1.6 billion a year. We have no extracurricular activities in majority of our schools. We're down to 7 football programs in our high school system. We have no middle school sports to an extent. Our unemployment rate is only increasing. Yes, gun violence is down, but other violence is up. We're not talking about the fact that 350 overdoses happened in 2024, and 80% of that was black and brown men and women. So we're still fighting the drug war within our own communities. A lot of these talking points are just talking points. There's no action items to them. I'm going to bring the solutions to the table because I've brought them to the table, forming different groups. I'm one of the co-founders of the South End Roxbury Community Partnership that was created to help assist people navigating substance use, homelessness, and mental health down on Mass and Cass because it affects more than just Mass and Cass. I've been advocating for gun violence since the early 90s, losing countless numbers of friends, mentoring kids to keep them away from the lifestyle that is glamorized through different media outlets. I've showed up at housing court on a Thursday to help a family save their home from being evicted. I've showed up to fire scenes for friends who don't have the network to be able to provide themselves with the next. One of the things that I talk about is the fact that, Massachusetts requires you to have auto insurance, but you don't have renter's insurance. So when your home catches on fire and you don't have the knowledge that you can obtain a renter's insurance, you wind up on the streets. The Red Cross gives you a couple of days in a hotel, and if you don't have the network or the family or the money to support yourself, you're homeless and you're down on 112 Atkinson Street. You're down on Southampton looking for services that are not there for families because they don't have family shelters. It's a men's shelters and a women's shelters. So I'm practical. I'm looking at things as a Bostonian. I drive these streets. I navigate the ups and downs that we go through. So I'm asking folks in Boston to give me an opportunity to lead and demonstrate how that leadership looks, to make sure that every voice is heard, not just the selected few or the ones that are in power, but the ones that are out here doing the legwork, getting on public transportation and going to work 5 days a week, working 2 jobs, missing your kids, sports events, school events, and sacrificing, every day to provide for your family. That's what I do. I provide for my family and my community 7 days a week. And I'm asking for your help because why wouldn't I? That's what you do when you're a good leader. I don't know everything, but that doesn't mean I'm not willing to sit and listen and learn. And that's what we need. We need a leader that's willing to listen and learn. And right now, that's not what we have. We have, we're in this dictatorship. We're being told what we want, even though people are telling us they're listening. So,
With 1 minute, your web page, phone number, if one wants to support your campaign, how would they reach you? How would they learn more about you?
The webpage is DeRosaForBoston.org. You can find me on all social media under DeRosa for Boston. My personal is Domingos DeRosa. You can find me on IG, Facebook, Twitter.